People who have never fully fit in often become excellent observers. They notice what others miss because they are not completely absorbed into the system around them. They can see patterns, contradictions, emotional dynamics, hidden rules, and possibilities that people inside the group may take for granted. Distance can hurt, but distance can also create perspective. It gives you the ability to ask, why is everyone doing this? Does this actually make sense? Is this what I want? Or is this simply what I was taught to want? Those questions can lead you somewhere much more authentic. But there is another part of this that people rarely talk about. Being different can become an identity too. You can become so attached to being the outsider that you begin rejecting connection before it has a chance to form. You can assume no one will understand you. You can start treating independence like protection. You can turn isolation into proof that you are special. That is not freedom either. The goal is not to become permanently separate. The goal is to stop forcing yourself into spaces that require self-abandonment while remaining open to the people and places where genuine connection is possible. Chosen one, real belonging will feel different from the belonging you had to earn. You will not have to constantly monitor yourself. You will not have to perform a personality. You will not feel like one wrong opinion could remove your place in the room. There will be space for difference, space for curiosity, space for silence, space for growth. And sometimes finding that kind of connection requires becoming comfortable with temporary solitude first. Because if you are terrified of being alone, you will keep choosing the wrong company just to avoid it. You will stay in environments that drain you because emptiness feels scarier than misalignment. But once you learn that solitude is survivable, even useful, your standards change. You stop choosing people simply because they are available. You stop treating every invitation as proof of worth. You stop confusing familiarity with connection. And slowly, your life begins to reorganize around what actually feels true. That may mean fewer people for a while. It may mean leaving spaces you once worked hard to enter. It may mean disappointing people who preferred the version of you that never questioned anything. It may mean becoming harder to categorize. But that is often what growth looks like from the outside. Messy, strange, inconvenient, difficult to explain. Chosen one, there may be a reason you never fit in, but that reason is not that you are destined to be alone. It may simply be that your life was never supposed to be built around fitting in first. Maybe your task was to learn yourself before you found your people. Maybe you needed to understand your values before joining another group. Maybe you needed enough distance from the crowd to hear your own thoughts clearly. Maybe you needed to lose the approval you were chasing so you could discover what you actually wanted. And maybe some of the loneliness you experienced was not an ending. Maybe it was a transition between versions of your life. The most important thing now is not to romanticize being different. It is to use it. Use the perspective. Use the awareness. Use the questions. Use the parts of yourself you once tried to hide. Build a life around them instead of apologizing for them. You do not need to become louder than everyone else. You do not need to prove that your path is superior. You do not need to convince anyone that you are chosen, different, special, or misunderstood. The strongest version of this identity is quiet. It does not need constant validation. It simply knows that alignment matters more than approval. So if you are in a season where you feel disconnected, if old environments feel strange, If certain conversations no longer satisfy you, if people you once related to suddenly feel distant, do not rush to assume that you are losing yourself. You may be meeting yourself more clearly than before. Give that process time. Pay attention to what feels alive. Notice what consistently drains you. Notice where you become smaller. Notice where you feel curious, energized, honest, and awake. Those signals matter. Your life does not have to look ordinary to be meaningful. Your timing does not have to match everyone else's. Your values do not need to be understood by every person around you. You were never required to fit everywhere. You were required to become someone you could live with when the room became quiet. And when you reach that point, belonging changes. You no longer ask the world to tell you where you belong. You begin choosing the places that recognize who you have already become. Chosen one. If you have spent most of your life feeling different, misunderstood, misplaced, or somehow out of sync with the people around you, this message is for you. There is a reason you never fully fit in, and it may not be because there is something wrong with you. In fact, the opposite may be true. Sometimes the people who struggle the most to belong are the ones who are not meant to disappear inside the crowd. They are meant to question, to notice, to see patterns other people ignore, and to eventually create a life that could never have been built by following everyone else. You may have spent years wondering why certain places never felt like home, why conversations that excited everyone else left you empty, why you could be surrounded by people and still feel strangely alone. You may have tried to adapt. You may have changed the way you spoke, dressed, thought, reacted, or expressed yourself just to make things easier. You may have learned how to become acceptable before you learned how to become yourself. And for a while that can work. You can learn the rules. You can become good at reading a room. You can laugh when everyone else laughs. Agree when agreement is expected. Stay quiet when your instincts are telling you something completely different. But eventually, something inside you gets tired of performing. Something begins to resist. You start noticing that belonging at the cost of yourself does not actually feel like belonging. It feels like disappearing. And this is where the real shift begins. Chosen one. Not fitting in is painful when you still believe the crowd is the destination. But once you realize that your path may be different, the same experience begins to mean something else. What once looked like rejection starts to look like information. What once felt like loneliness starts to reveal itself as space. What once made you feel strange begins to show you where your individuality has been hiding. This does not mean every moment of isolation was beautiful or necessary. It does not mean every person who misunderstood you was secretly part of some grand plan. But it does mean that your differences can carry information about the kind of life you are actually supposed to build. Think about the places where you have felt most uncomfortable. Sometimes discomfort comes from insecurity, fear, or lack of confidence, and those things deserve honesty. But sometimes discomfort comes from a deeper mismatch. You can feel when your values do not belong in a certain environment. You can feel when a conversation constantly asks you to become smaller. You can feel when a group rewards versions of you that no longer feel real. And the longer you grow, the harder it becomes to ignore those signals. This is why certain people begin to feel more alone during periods of transformation. They are no longer fully connected to the old version of their life, but the new version has not appeared yet. They are standing in between identities. The old world is familiar, but no longer comfortable. The new world is calling, but it is not yet clear. This middle space can make you question everything. You may wonder whether you made a mistake. You may think you have become too sensitive, too distant, too difficult, too selective. But sometimes you are simply becoming more accurate about what fits and what does not. That is a very different thing. Chosen one, you were not meant to belong everywhere. No one is. But when you have spent years chasing universal acceptance, this truth can feel almost revolutionary. You begin to realize that some rooms are not meant to understand you. Some people will only like the version of you that makes sense to them. Some relationships are built around roles you are no longer willing to play. And some environments only feel comfortable when you silence the parts of yourself that would challenge them. If you keep trying to belong in those places, you may succeed socially while becoming more disconnected internally. That is the trap. You can be included and still feel invisible. You can be surrounded and still feel unknown. You can be accepted and still feel like no one has actually met you. This is why external belonging cannot replace internal alignment. When you know who you are, you stop measuring every environment by whether it accepts you. You start asking a different question. Can I remain myself here? Can I think honestly here? Can I grow here? Can I breathe here? Can I speak without constantly editing myself? Can I become more of who I am? Or does this place only work when I become less? Those questions change everything. They turn belonging from a desperate search into a conscious choice. And this is where being different begins to become a strength.